Want to help with America's $36 trillion debt? The Treasury Department now takes PayPal and Venmo donations. Yeah, like they haven't already stolen enough taxpayer money to give to other nations and fund wars. Happy Sunday, everyone. I'm Akorn. Welcome back to Laugh While the World Burns. I hope all of you are having a great weekend and that you're ready for today's show where we highlight some of the idiocracy that is modern-day society. If you enjoyed today's show, please remember to hit that like and subscribe. And let's get into today's show. Movies when women have cancer. Movies when men have cancer. Yeah, that's Hollywood for you. Man really excited for government to release all the government documentation of all the government crimes. Yeah, people really think that this is going to happen at some point, but it's all just more distractions. The EPA moves to slash Obama-era gas can regulations. Vent the darn can. Gas cans used to pour gas. Now they just dribble like a child's sippy cup. No, what happens half of the time is that you end up spilling gas everywhere else except for where you're trying to actually put it. All because you can't get these stupid safety cans to actually work. U.S. Olympic officials bar transgender women from women's competitions. The U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee changed its eligibility rules on Monday to comply with President Trump's executive order, taking the decision away from national governing bodies for each sport. The worst thing about this is that a law actually had to be made to try to stop this. And still yet, much of it continues across the country, especially in the schools, because there is no common sense or morality left in the country these days. I'd have to guess about 95% of Americans who mainstream media call the far right want only to work for a living, keep most of their money, raise their kids in peace, get them a good education without left-wing indoctrination, own a nice home, and be left alone. You know, extremists. Yeah, that is a term that they're using more and more. And unfortunately, you're only going to see this increase in the near future, especially when it comes time of all the people who refuse the up-and-coming digital IDs. It's only a matter of time and a few events away. I'm a good person, just damaged from being good to the wrong people. This is probably true for a lot of us. Riddle me this. How do immigrants strengthen our country, but not their own? It was always about making a strategic move to deplete resources and to put overwhelming strain on all essential services. Uber to begin offering riders a choice of woman driver or good driver. That would actually be pretty hilarious if they actually did something like that. If you could stop making memes about Epstein's client list, that would be great. There wouldn't be memes if they'd actually released the info like they claimed they would for how many years now? But of course, it was never going to be released. Instead, this was just another one of their long-running distractions to keep people occupied and focused on. All the while, everything else just continues. Never in my life have I wanted to steal a sign more than I do right now. That would be a good one to have. Here's another great press conference from Sheriff Grady.
You think, well, I have set up a deal with an ugly woman. And I think you would all agree that this guy's an ugly woman, right? This is what you really get when the makeup comes off. This is Jason Bathis. Now I want you to think about this a minute, okay? You decide that you're going to hook up with a woman. She comes in and she's already uglier than a mud fence, right? And then as you start to engage, you find out, hey, this dudette is a dude and look what he really looks like. Yeah, he looks like he should have been in a Scarface movie someplace. I don't know.
I love the fact that the guy standing just behind him to his left is trying his best the whole time to not break out laughing. Chuck E. Cheese employee arrested in mouse costume on credit card fraud charges. The arresting officer grabbed the suspect's arm and said, "Chucky, come with me," according to the arrest report. A Chuck E. Cheese employee wearing a character costume was arrested at a restaurant location in Tallahassee, Florida. Of course it's Florida, right? On Wednesday on credit card fraud charges. Janelle Jones, 41, of Tallahassee, was let out of a Chuck E. Cheese in handcuffs by police while wearing a full mouse costume. You never saw that happen to our Chuck E. Cheese back in the day, even though he looked like he was the head of the pizza mafia. California set to ban Tesla sales. Just keep on leading the country for the so-called need of electric vehicles, California. In 1990, the IRS seized Willie Nelson's bank accounts and real estate holdings for a $16 million tax debt. Al Sharpton owes in excess of $19 million in taxes. Explain white privilege again? Well, like somebody added here, money matters. As in, whose pockets are you patting? A lot of people claim that honesty is the best policy, then get all offended when you tell them the truth. That is 1000% accurate. The only thing that really changes is the topic that it concerns. I may be crazy, but crazy is far better than stupid. Kamala Harris mocked for post celebrating one-year anniversary of failed presidential campaign. Any reason to have a party, I guess. Why do mostly peaceful protests start shortly after schools break for summer? Because teachers, professors, and their recruits need to get paid somehow, and socialist programs ain't cutting it. Fact check true.
The guy's here to fix the leak on your solid gold faucet.
Send him in.
This place looks like the Liberace Museum.
Hey, I'm the prince of this city. When you're in my office, you treat me with respect.
Who did your decorating? Saddam Hussein?
I'll have you know this is all very classy stuff. And that painting of the tiger and the woman has got me laid on numerous occasions.
I didn't know gay dudes liked tiger paintings.
Hey, you've crossed the line. I've killed people for less.
Looks like you killed a squirrel to me and put it right on top of your head.
You're one to talk. Your hair looks exactly like mine.
Yeah, except my hair's supposed to look like this. I'm a janitor.
Every summer, fate chooses a CEO for the sacrifice. That's the ritual. Sure seems that way in the last few years for sure. I don't think the top left one really qualifies though. Deported illegals could have cured cancer or been an astronaut. Interesting. Now do aborted babies. I would say something else here, but it'd likely get the video flagged. Honestly, I don't think I have any more new passwords left in me. You want to steal my identity? Go ahead. Enjoy the dead and terrible posture. Montreal, Canada grocery store turns rooftop into functional garden in order to sell freshest possible vegetables in store. That's actually a pretty cool idea. This is exactly what I see when a grown man says he bought an electric vehicle. Well, they're not wrong. It might be 12 volt, but it's still electric. In Japan, employees who arrive early to work park further away from the building, allowing late arrivals to park closer and still make it on time. This practice is known as mutual understanding. I have to say, from the things that I've seen over the years, Japanese culture certainly is a whole lot better in many ways than just about any other country. And I think a lot of that goes back to the family, how they were raised, and that people still have mutual respect for each other in the country. Lindsey Graham. POTUS announcement yesterday about sending American-made weapons, paid for by Europeans, to Ukraine through NATO was welcome news. Equally important was his statement that if the fighting had not ended in 50 days, he would impose up to 100% tariffs on countries buying cheap Russian oil, propping up Putin's war machine, hitting Putin where it hurts the most. If Putin and others are wondering what happens on day 51, I would suggest they call the Ayatollah. In other words, they're threatening to use B-2 bombers and drop bombs on Russia. Do people really think that Russia wouldn't intervene in that? And further still, most people, at least in the US and probably most Western nations, apparently still have no idea why this war started in the first place. Because you'll never hear the media talk about how the US and NATO broke the Minsk agreement, which they've now, in the last couple of years, came out and stated that they never intended to keep that treaty in the first place. And secondly, that Russia wasn't going to allow Ukraine to go into NATO because the US was going to put missiles in Ukraine, which if they had of, they'd have less than a 5-minute flight time to Moscow or St. Petersburg. Would the US allow such a thing to happen? No, because that's exactly what it was on the Cuban Missile Crisis, which that only happened because the US put economic sanctions and other measures against the Soviet Union. Now this is one example of white privilege that's actually pretty funny. Give it a watch here.
The entitlement of these white people parking in these handicapped spots.
If there was anyone that didn't fully get this, he's talking about the truck. Stomach bug sickens over 140 people on Caribbean cruise, forcing passengers to isolate in cabins. There is far too many things that's been happening on cruise ships in the last few years. Even if given the opportunity, I would never want to go on one of those. Research has shown that laughing for 2 minutes is just as healthy as a 20-minute jog. So now I'm sitting in the park laughing at all the joggers. That's one way, I guess.
Saving 1 penny a day is $36,500 at the end of the year. Let that sink in.
Ladies and gentlemen, today's public education system.
I went to college, so that makes me better than you. Now pay off my loans, you uneducated racist.
Joe Rogan claims Hunter Biden could be president, insists he's more intelligent than most people think. Podcaster Joe Rogan suggested that former President Biden's son, Hunter Biden, could possibly become president someday now that his scandals have all been exposed and it's become old news. Well, he is right in the respect that people's memories are awful short, and since the media has moved on, a lot of people will forget. Just like in a few months from now, most people will forget all about the Epstein files too. U.S. migrants blamed for Mexico City rent spike. Locals protest soaring costs. I've seen a few articles and some videos concerning this, and to boil it down, there's a lot of people that work online and things in the U.S. that have moved legally to Mexico City. And because of that, rent prices and other things have went up because there's more of a demand for housing. Now, the locals there are complaining about this, but you never heard anything said when it was concerning the U.S., which was far more than just higher prices. Things like migrant crisis pushed U.S. homelessness to record high in 2024. Biden administration officials say the increase in the annual point-in-time homelessness count was driven by a surge of asylum seekers in January. Or another article, homelessness surged 18% to new record in 2024 amid a lack of affordable housing across the U.S. Why was there a lack of affordable housing? Because many U.S. citizens that were living in affordable housing or even in the shelters, including U.S. veterans, were kicked out so that the migrants could then be put there. And as we all know, that's barely scratching the surface into all the problems that it has caused. Biden's teleprompter assures nation it approved all autopin decisions. It might as well, because it usually doesn't matter which puppet is holding the pen anyway. Jeffrey Epstein committed self-unaliving, had no client list, FBI and the Department of Justice fine. The FBI and Department of Justice have concluded that Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted sex offender who unalived in jail nearly 6 years ago, committed self-unaliving and had no client list, according to a report. Yeah, just forget about all the different papers that came out and all the so-called records that they've been talking about this entire time, until the last few months when they completely flipped everything 180 degrees. You got a lot of people saying things like, if there was any Republicans that was in there, the Democrats would have released it when they were in office. Well, the same is true that if there was any Democrats in there, then the Republicans would release it now, which is what they've said they were going to do for the past several years. Instead, what has this actually been the entire time? As I said earlier, it was just another big distraction to keep people focused and occupied on things like this instead of the real things that's been happening in the country the whole time. Further, if there was any truth to any of this, like I said a long time ago, it's never going to come out. British tyranny. Police raid and arrest 11-year-old child for attending recent anti-immigration protest. British police have raided and arrested an 11-year-old child for participating in a spate of recent anti-immigration protests, some of which turned violent. Local police confirmed the arrest of the child on Thursday as they widened their crackdown against political dissidents and those who participated in the demonstrations. Do people really think it's a coincidence that all the Western nations are being flooded with immigrants, mostly from the Middle Eastern nations, and then protected by the nations that they're going into? Sure, they flipped a policy here in the U.S., supposedly, for the moment at least, but how many have they really gotten out of the country compared to the amount that has come into the country in the last 20 years? They'll never make a dent in the millions of people that is here. But that's not what it's about. They're just using that to further the agenda on another point. I might talk about that on a future episode. You with the wrong girl. Angry message found on destroyed Florida home. An angry message was found scrawled on a Florida home that was wrecked by some heavy machinery Friday morning. Deputies responded to the home around 7 a.m. after receiving a vandalism call and found it nearly destroyed. Scrawled on the side of the home was a man's name with the message, "You with the wrong girl." Officials said no suspect has been identified, but the incident remains under investigation. It looks like she not only got the front side of the house, but from what I can tell, it looks like she got the back side too. Former Cleveland Indians manager blames white people for wanting to return to old team name. Yeah, I forgot what the politically correct name that they changed it to now. But if fans don't like it, stop watching them and stop going to the games. They changed back after a short time of that. U.S. approves another $172 million in Ukraine weapons aid. Yeah, because Trump said that he would end the war between Russia and Ukraine on his first day back in office, right? No, just gonna continue to fund the war just like the previous puppet, because the two-party system is a delusion. Republicans, vote for us. We'll cut government. Me, show me. Republicans. Yeah, even Elon found out the hard way about this. Two things I don't like: a disrespectful child and a parent that thinks it's funny. Manners are very important. Not every one of them by any means. However, the majority as a whole in today's generation have no respect for anyone, whether it's their parents, their teachers, their elders, the police, or anybody else. But it all comes back to how they were raised and what has been pushed through the school systems. Don't just teach your children to read, teach them to question what they read. Teach them to question everything. That's what most people, including most adults, don't do these days, especially when it comes from someone that they like. As long as so-and-so said it, it must be true. And I'll end today's show with this. If you run out of money after paying for bills and food, you aren't broke. You're responsible. While that is very true, you're still broke. You got your bills paid for, but you still don't have any money to put back or even to save for an emergency. I remember seeing a news article back some time ago, and I think it said 30-some% of the country couldn't even cover a $1,000 emergency, which tells you a lot about how bad things really are these days, especially considering that most people would use a credit card to do such in the first place. If you enjoyed today's show, please like, subscribe, and share the videos. That's all for today's show, but I'll see you guys back here on Friday's show. Until then, I thank you all for watching. You guys take care and stay safe this week. This is Akorn, over and out.